Recording in progress.
December gets to be so crazy with everything from area committee meetings to OSAC meetings to every meeting to get things in under the end of the year. But it's exciting to be able to surmise all that we have done in the last year for all of you and see that there's so many here that have either through direct interaction, grants, whatever, have participated. I want to do introductions. I'm going to just start on that side of the room. If you could just name who you're with.
Paul D. Giovanni with 1 Mile Transportation. Boston Towing is another one of our operations. Domestic Marine, Windsurf Marine.
DeCola, Stowaway Bank National Elise.
Danny Badger, MITC grant.
John Silva, Marine Environmental Recovery.
Early MassDEP contract for Washington.
Allison Butler, Steve Flurry.
Good morning, John DuPont, Marine Environmental Recovery.
Keith Pasiga with US EPA Emergency Planning and Response.
Bill Potter with the Boston Harbor Docking Pilots. Blaine DeSania, also Docking Pilots.
Jason Scott, Chief of Emergency Management for Sector Southeast.
Dirk Hoffman, Boston Harbor Pilots.
Cameron Wentworth, from the Guard Master.
Patrick Smith, Marshall Fire.
MOSPRA, Sector Boston. Sue Lombard, Sector Boston.
Well done.
General Smith, Vineyard Wind.
Ian Campbell, Vineyard Wind.
Jim Collins, MassDEP.
Chris Blottinger, Woods Hole Group.
Kathy Kylie, MassDEP Boston. Julie Garcia Serrano.
Hank Jones, MassDEP Southeast Region Emergency Response.
John Handerhan, MassDEP Southeast Region.
Steve Mahoney, MassDEP.
And Sam Butler, Nuka Research.
The MOSPRA program is the success that it is because of our huge contractors. Nuka Research and Marine Environmental are our primary contractors in the sense of John and the group and trainings, trailers, Nuka. We've had some changes in faces. Sam Butler is our lead with Nuka now. Mike Popovich moved on to sunnier pastures in Florida and is having a blast. Jim Collins is new to our MOSPRA program here for us. Dan Crafton, who is the former emergency response chief, retired, and Andy has moved into that chair. And I want to say thank you to Pat Hurley, our colleague and purveyor of this beautiful location. Thank you. Do I advance? Do I advance in or do you advance? I don't know how to do that. Help! There's the technology. There's the techno. Anyone that knows me knows that's not a highlight of Julie's abilities. Here we are. So how does it keep going? Let's okay. Today's agenda, we've got a good cover, short amount of time. I think I will pass it over to Steve Mahoney, who's going to kick off the MOSPRA updates. We have more to start for grants, the first responder training exercises, upcoming projects. So there's a lot on the agenda, and we're just gonna jump in.
Great, thanks, Julie.
So you can pretend you know how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do have the list up of the people that are on the committee. Let me see. All right. And so we'll be working with them.
Click on the screen.
Gotcha. Okay, a couple updates. We really tried to make a concerted effort to make the website a little bit better and more up to date. So we're hoping that we'll just keep that up to date, especially with the grants and other things going on with the recent climate work. So, please, if you have any interest in anything, please get into the website and check that out. And we're hoping to really provide a lot of information through that. Last year, the last meeting, we were in the process of conducting our master service agreement. And we're fortunate to have Nuka back. This is our 4th master service agreement. And we also, Woods Hole Group is also another contractor. So, Nuka has for a long time has just provided excellent service for MassDEP and really got the program to where it is now. And we're excited to have Woods Hole Group, who has a lot of complementary skills to Nuka. They've done a lot of great modeling, a lot of oceanographic sensors. They've done a lot of work that was the basis for all the ShimCap and the Resilient Massachusetts work. So we're really excited to have them on contract. And so that's going to be a 7-year contract. And so some of us won't be here. In 7 years, we'll be retired. Yeah, this might be Pat's last one. He's the contract administrator for this. And he keeps telling us how it's his last one, the whole process of getting it done. So just quick update on this is the revenue. And it's really jumped up primarily because it's in an interest-bearing account. It's, the proceeds that we get from the fee on each barrel of oil offloaded at Marine Terminal probably comes in a little over 3 million each year, but the interest is really jumped it up. The fund is probably about 40 million or so overall. And in terms of what we've spent, 24, which is ended in June 30th, is rather low. And I just left those dollar signs under ports and grants. So we just, Jim's going to be talking about the grants, but the total for that is about 600,000. The ports between the Narragansett, Cape Cod ports and the proposed Boston ports, we're probably looking at 600,000. So, at the end of fiscal year 25, I think we'll have spent over 2 million pretty easily. Just update on the tug escort program. This is the so we're kind of wondering what's it going to look like post-COVID. In 2021. So these are, let me step back. These are the escorts and budget. So this isn't capturing oil that's necessarily coming into marine terminals in Boston, from where that didn't go through Buzzards Bay. This is primarily barges that are being towed through Buzzards Bay and the canal. And we're just to see, and was it going to really bounce back after 2021, 2020? And you can see it's gone up slightly. We haven't regained 2018 numbers by any means. So it'll be interesting to see. This year, we only have 251 escorts. I think last year at this time, it was 283. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up and what things will look like, in the years ahead. And then total barrels, there definitely seems to be, it bumped back up a little bit in 2023, but certainly hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. And then the last graph is 2024. Those are just the quarters. So you can see it's 21 million. So definitely down from what we saw before COVID. And I think I'll turn it over to Jim Collins.
Sounds good. Just advance with the Eric?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about physical oceanographic real-time systems or ports. The port systems are a navigational aid to mariners. MassDEP set up ports in partnership with NOAA and Syracuse. We have a 5-year contract currently for O&M of all the assets, around 900,000. And ports provides real-time publicly available data to mariners, and there's a link below to the website where you can actually get the data. The picture on the right is Julie and Steve launching one of the port's buoys, weight buoys. I'm not sure who's the third person in the picture. I'm not sure. Woods Hole Group? Okay. So ports is set up by area. There's the Cape Cod Buzzards Bay ports, that area, Narragansett ports, and then Boston ports is coming soon. And the Cape Cod Buzzards Bay ports includes 2 wave buoys, the Buzzards Bay buoy, the Cape Cod buoy, and also some sensors in the Cape Cod Canal at Mass Maritime Academy. There's 2 current meters there. Narragansett ports has some sensors in Rhode Island, but in Massachusetts, there's a bunch of sensors in Fall River, including a meteorological station. There's a wave buoy, and there's some other data collection things there as well. So here's a map. It shows the location of some of the buoys. You can see the buoy in Cape Cod Bay, the buoy in Buzzards Bay. Those give wave height, frequency, duration. I think they also give air temperature and water temperature. The Cape Cod Canal sensors give current in the canal. I think there's actually two or three current meters there. One is in the center of the canal. The other one's off center. And then again in Fall River, there's some more ports information collected there. So currently we're establishing a Boston port system. The reason we're establishing it was DEP was approached by Boston docking pilots and Boston pilots. Some of them are in the room today. And that's because the vessels going into Boston Harbor keep getting bigger and bigger. I was told recently that some of the vessels are actually only a meter or so below the Tobin Bridge, the height of the vessel. The picture on the right is one of the larger vessels that came in 2022, and just shows like, a really large vessel coming into Boston Harbor. I think it was 1,100 feet long. So Boston Ports is going to consist of 3 navigational aids. There'll be a meteorological station, a current meter, and then an air gap sensor on Tobin Bridge. It's being supported by Coast Guard, MassDEP, Boston Pilots, MassDOT, DEP, Boston Harbor Master, NOAA, and so on. So Boston Ports, we've been planning it for a little bit of time now. We're currently going to do some site visits and purchase the equipment and install the equipment. In fact, we have a meeting next week to do that on MassDEP property. The equipment we're hoping to install very soon is navigational aids, excluding the air gap sensor on Tobin Bridge. The air gap sensor on Tobin Bridge, we're working on that as well with MassDOT, but as you can imagine, there's some permits there, some engineering approvals that we have to get. So that might not be installed as quickly, but we hope that the navigational aids themselves will be installed by the summer of next year, maybe sooner. Well, that's it for me. Julie.
I have a quick question. Why the Tobin Bridge? Air gap sensor? Yeah. Car ships? For the car ships, scrap ships? Is that what the guys are concerned with now? LNG?
Anything. Spill trailers. We maintain when MOSPRA was born, and the Bouchard B120, how all of this started came about. We didn't have equipment. The towns didn't have equipment. We didn't have people trained. We didn't have equipment. We didn't have plans. We didn't have any of this. So then now we have 70 coastal communities that we have 83 trailers, 70 coastal communities. The trailers are 16, 20 feet long, have a lot of equipment in them, 1,000 feet of boom each, and other ancillary equipment. They're all over 10 years old. Marine environmental recovery, John DuPont is our key trailer guru, and basically we're keeping these things ready to roll is my mantra. If I had a tattoo, I think that's what it would be. That may not be proper, but whatever. We're going to see pictures say more than words. So but each trailer sits outside at a maritime, at a coastal community. They're in the weather, they're outside, they're not used a lot. We ask the towns to hook it up and drive it around every now and then and make sure things roll. And if something is wrong, call us and let us fix it. John does at least a minimum of one, annual inspection where everything's taken apart and looked at. We're running into all kinds of problems, from tires to rot, frames, doors, the back of the trailer where the The boom is all stored, has a big spring door, and those doors, it's a ramp, and they take a lot of wear and tear. And a lot of the stuff sits, and that's one of the biggest problems. Mice are a huge problem, but we really, ask the communities. We maintain ownership, but the towns have signed off and agreed to store them and keep them ready to go. Because we have the agreement that DEP can call up and say, hey, Town A, can you please bring your trailer to this parking lot at that location for another response? Not people, but bring that resource to us at a certain area. So they need to be ready to move. And if it's, it's getting difficult with the equipment getting a little older. And again, the weather. One of the biggest problems are these little things. It's funny because I sent my slides to Sam, and I had a really nice picture of a mouse in my slides, but Sam took my mouse out. It's a picture, I noticed. But the mouse damage, I mean, John's going crazy with willow pads and dryer sheets and whatever else to get these animals out of these trailers. Again, it's to just ask the towns to open the doors, call us, let us know, report, and really help us take care of this equipment, because no one wants to get the call that there has been something that happens. We have a resource sitting in a parking lot, and next thing you know, I'm sorry, I can't get the trailer there because the tire's flat or something, something is not up with the equipment. We just don't want to open up that can of worms. Another thing, you can see the damage on the back door of that trailer. Some of it's delaminating. The trailer, you can see the picture there of the roof. The trailers all came with roof vents, which the new model, whichever we go to from moving forward, will not have a roof vent because it's just a problem. They crack, they split, they leak, and they've just become a real problem. And also we have issues, and John finds these on inspections and stuff. And if any of us are out in the field, we always try to say, hey, where's the trailer? Let's go see if we can find the trailer, because we do have a log of where they are, where they're kept, is where they're stored. And you'll see in this photo, this trailer, John went down to do an inspection, etc. And you can't, kind of hard time getting to it with it just kind of being barricaded into a parking lot. It doesn't really fit with any kind of an emergency response kind of mode. So that's kind of a challenge that we face, and we kind of remind communities. This is, unfortunate. This is Lowell. This is an inland trailer, but I mean, this is the kind of thing that you get this phone call. This trailer is, totally ruined. It's being replaced with something temporarily. But this is the kind of thing too, and a lot of it is, where are they being stored? What's the hazards that it's facing? etc. And just kind of reminding people in the communities to, give it a little love. We don't want to be using them all the time. I mean, they're inspected before any exercise. If the town is up for an exercise, Marine Environmental gets, make sure that the trailer is in peak performance and ready for show. But, we want them to be that way all the time. And this is the list of what the first batch of replacement trailers are going to be. We'll probably, John will be coming out with a, kind of a schedule of, fix one, replace it, flip them out, and just kind of keep it going. One of the biggest things that we have to figure out is how to get the nice big state seal that we had before. We have to make sure we get our proper signage. So this is something that's coming up, in the next year. We'll start with the replacement of, as I said, we have 83 trailers. We also have the foam fill boom trailers. I mean, and this has come up before. The foam fill boom, 42-inch foam fill boom, 42 inches is nice and big. This was equipment that we acquired free from the Coast Guard. It's staged down at Joint Base Cape Cod. It's 11,500 feet of foam fill boom in these containers, and the trailers need some TLC. John's given us a list of a review. The tires of the trailers, the trailers have airbags, which are fantastic. And, the trailers were brought up by independent truckers that we hired to bring them up from Virginia. And they just, they raved about the quality of the trailers, the equipment, and it doesn't look that good. The paint job looks bad on those boxes, but the equipment's brand new. It was replaced from Deepwater Horizon. It's never been splashed. 42 inches, cranes, boats, that's a lot of equipment to splash this stuff. It's the kind of thing that if we didn't acquire it, and since we have somewhere to store it, it would have been destroyed. And it didn't seem right to have this kind of resource destroyed. It's here in Massachusetts. We can broaden our horizon on, mutual aid with other agencies and stuff, but I would like to see it hit the water before I retire. We better do this soon. And again, John's looking at, estimate about 9,000 per trailer for what has to be done. But again, just another cost item that will be coming up in the next year. I'm going to pass on to colleague Andy Jones, Section Chief, Emergency Response, Southeast Region, talk about the Massachusetts Tribe workshop we had last March.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. So I did attend this training. It consisted, there was two-day workshops, one of which occurred in May of 23, and the second one occurred in March of 24. The first one was just a tabletop where we discussed, what the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe wanted to protect. I should bring up that this was put on by NOAA's Sea Grant and NOAA's Disaster Preparedness Program, but facilitated by MIT's Sea Grant. Danny Badger's here today. He ran it, did a great job. But the first one was a tabletop exercise. One consisted of tabletop deployment. Moran came down with a spill trailer, did a little show and tell about all the stuff that was in there. And we actually deployed boom. The weather wasn't that great that day, but we were successful in deploying boom. Great response from the tribe, from state, from the Commonwealth, as well as U.S. Coast Guard. So one of them to an aquaculture site that they operate for tribal members. I guess they do some sales as well. So it was just a good thing to finally meet with the tribe. I think we've been trying to engage with the tribe for years. I know as far as I've been involved in at least the Southeast Mass Rhode Island area plan, we've been trying to get the tribal entities involved with us. And this was one thing I think kind of, aside from the good work we did in these workshops, was that the tribe actually came to the table and is now seems to be a great partner with our efforts for the area plan. So that's kind of one of the unsung benefits of this. If anybody has any questions, Danny's here, and he can. Oh yeah, so let me. So this shows the other two pictures are us at the boat ramp where we deployed the boom. We didn't get to actually drag it all the way down to the aquaculture site because, like I said, because of the weather, but we did put it around some floating docks that were there. And again, the Mashpee tribe used their own vessels and personnel, so they got really good hands-on experience. I believe they are trying to copy our trailer build out. I know they were reaching out to us about that.
They got equipment.
All right, good. So that was one of the things, to get their own equipment. So another great thing.
Next slide.
Okay, additional photos. And that was the bottom photo, shows the floating dock we kind of used as a representation of an aquaculture site. Any questions on that? Okay, New Bedford Village Pump Out Program. We did talk about this last year. We were kind of in the end of what we were doing out there. So basically what happened was we ran for several years, the Commonwealth with MOSPRA ran a bilge pump out program in New Bedford Harbor where we pumped the vessel bilges from mainly commercial fishing vessels, free of charge, where we would send a vac truck out, pump the vessels, and dispose of that material at a licensed facility. The reasoning for that was to try to limit the amount of mystery spills we were having in the harbor. So we ran that for several years, kind of crashed when COVID occurred. We didn't do it anymore. And then some state reps and other people, port partners in the city, wanted to see something start up again so we could continue this conversation and try to find a solution. So From July to December of 2023, we resumed this program. We didn't have the data last OSAC meeting, but this is what we got for the final tally. We did 12 pump outs, 48 vessels, and we did the computation calculation of what we removed a little differently from the previous iteration, but the estimate was 3,260 gallons of oil removed. Since then, and I don't know if somebody's going to talk about the grant thing after, but just to build on this, Buzzards Bay, and somebody will discuss this in more detail, but Buzzards Bay Coalition got a grant through MOSPRA to do additional work and actually try to locate a site, which is something the Commonwealth couldn't really do. So building on what everybody built on, including Buzzards Bay, because they were a partner in this, they're looking for an actual site or a set of sites where they could house a facility. Now, I'm using that term loosely. It could mean a multitude of things, or it's a holding facility where fill oil goes to and then eventually goes to a disposal site, or whether it's treated on site. But they are working on that. And again, it's a nice continuation of what the Commonwealth set out to do, as well as all the port partners. And I hope that that continues on and we see some success with that. There we go. Nice segue into that.
So I'm going to talk about the MOSPRA grants, as Andy already alluded to. So we've done 2 rounds of MOSPRA grants so far. 2021, we did 9 grants for around 215,000. Round 2, they started in 2023, but we issued the grants in this year, and those 15 grants for almost 700,000. And we're going to do another set of grants next year, and we're going to make the formal grant announcement in the spring. Grants are available to local governments, nonprofits, academia, and so on. Anything that benefits coastal communities and advances the goals of MOSPRA can be put in for a grant. I'm going to talk about some of the grants in more detail, hopefully to benefit anyone who's thinking of putting in a grant. It gives you some really good examples of grants we've issued in the past. So in round 1, 2021, New England Wildlife Center, they got a grant for training and field kits. Plymouth Harbor Master got a grant for a new waste oil tank. Situate Fire Department got 2 grants, one to start a drone program, and the other one to purchase forward-looking infrared cameras. The Marion Fire Department got 2 grants. Drone program was begun and drones purchased, and oil spill preparedness plan was also completed. Fall River Fire Department got a grant in 2021 for spill response training. Mass Maritime Academy got a grant for an aquatic vegetation sensor, and the City of Everett got a grant for 3 optical oil detection sensors in the Mystic River. In 2024, these are grants that we just awarded this year, so they're fresh off the press, I guess. Some of them have already started and actually completed and invoiced us. Most of them are still underway. Barnstable Fire Department got a grant for a FLIR camera. Battleship Cove, I'm going to talk about more in an upcoming slide. So they got a grant, but I'll talk about them more later. Same thing goes with New England Wildlife. I'm going to talk about here in a second. Boston Harbor Docking Pilots and Boston Pilot Associations, they both got grants for similar things, handheld portable navigation equipment like GPS and other things that make navigation more precise for them. Buzzards Bay Coalition, Andy talked about just a minute ago. I'm going to talk about a little bit more as well in another slide. Saugus River Watershed got a grant for spill response plans and training. Lynn Fire Department and Plymouth Fire Department got a grant to purchase drones. Bourne Fire Department, spill response and drone training. Com Fire District, spill response training. Fall River Fire Department, coastal spill response training. Hingham Fire Department, drone infrared camera and training. Lynn Fire Department, drone mapping. And Salisbury Fire Department, drones and drone pilot training. So as you can see, a lot of people went for the drones. So I'm not going to talk about them anymore. I have a few slides on a few grants that are a little more interesting, just to give people a sense of what you might do with one of these grants. I was in the Navy a long time ago, so this is one was actually very interesting to me. The USS Kennedy is a retired U.S. Navy Gearing class destroyer. It's in Battleship Cove in Fall River. It's a museum. It's been in a museum since 1973. So for this grant, they wanted to survey the vessel for all petroleum products, all tanks, machinery, sumps, and things like that, and then hopefully remove all that oil as well. This is really important because there have been some museum ships that have almost sank. Like up in Buffalo, there was a ship that came very close to sinking, and I believe there was still some oil on board there. So if this ship were to sink, we don't want the oil on board the ship. You know, again, it's from 1945, so you know how long these vessels are going to last is always up in question, I think. Next grant I'm going to talk about, well, Andy talked about this, Buzzards Bay Coalition. They got a grant to evaluate a pump out station. They're going to rank the suitability of number of stations. They're going to evaluate the best option and technologies for a pump out station and complete conceptual designs for 3 of the locations. So this is continuing the work that we already did in Buzzards Bay. And again, we're trying to solve the problem of getting a pump out station there so that fishing vessels don't dump their bilge out at sea with the oil in it. Next grant is for the New England Wildlife Center. This grant is to provide additional training to wildlife and first responders. Provide additional training to wildlife first responders, provide additional wildlife response kits, and increase the bed space of the New England Wildlife Center. This is important because they're one of the few agencies locally that do this type of work where they rescue birds and things like that impacted with oil. The last one I'm talking about is the Saugus River Watershed Council. They're going to develop a site-specific spill response plan for training, preparedness training for the Saugus and Pines rivers. They're going to determine how oil spill could be prevented from expanding in those rivers and collaborate with the Coast Guard to mark navigable reaches of the Saugus and Pine rivers with aids to navigation. Some of the reaches of those rivers have areas where they could use some more navigational aids. So the upcoming grant is going to be next year. We're going to be soliciting coastal communities and other agencies to submit grants. We're going to hopefully going to announce the grant in the spring. Submittals are going to be due in the summer, and we're going to issue the grants in the late summer or fall. The grant, we're hoping to give out over $1 million in grants next year. And any questions on the grants, you can certainly contact me, Julie, or Steve Mahoney. Our email address is provided here. Also, you can go on our website. There's information about the grants. That's it for me.
First responder training and GRS testing exercises. I think this is the research started this from the beginning, from day one, when this program was being born. Sam Butler is now our lead planner, organizer, guru in making these things successful, which is a lot of pre-work. Mike Popovich, who started, man, he loved charts and graphs and tables and he's got tables of every color. But we have the towns scheduled, I think, until 2075 on who's getting training and what towns go where, what regions you're in. And there is a lot behind the scenes that gets the group out in the field and actually putting stuff in water. I mean, people don't know they have these trailers that I talked about. They don't know. Nobody knew what a geographic response strategy was. Nobody, I stood in Fairhaven with Bouchard oil all around, people going, DEP, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm waiting for cleanup. I don't know. So, it just flabbergasts me how far we've come, and we really, it's just like, yes. But this year, we usually, we have some really fun numbers. I mean, for 16 years, the trainings are so well received. The trainings are sought. The towns want these trainings. They're so receptive. To just getting 160 I mean, I'm sorry, in 16 years, we have done 108 exercises. We had our 100th. That's coming up, a little story on that one. But we have 2,774 individuals trained on spill response and boom deployment that we didn't have back in 20 years ago when the Bouchard spill happened. We have people with hands-on capability that understand you don't just throw the stuff in the water. There's a lot more to putting boom in the water with anchors and systems. And where are you putting it? Are you going to get the oil to go where you want it to recover, or are you doing more impact? What are you doing? There's a lot more to it. The geographic response strategies were developed. And as we do the testing and the exercises, we're testing a tactic most of the time. We try to. A lot of them are too big for the local entities, but we test the tactics and we revise them. I mean, if we find that something has changed, we change it, and that GRS is changed. So there's multiple things coming out of these exercises. We just heard, Jim say drone about 15 times. Drones are really becoming such, they seem kind of like a fun kid. They have really become such an integral part of the overall picture of spill response. It's fun. It's amazing because there's something else to say here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. You can see the photos here, just the image of what you're able to see and share with people, real time in the field, etc. But yeah, we all like numbers. 2024 completed exercises. We usually try to do 10 exercises a year. We only do spring, fall. Coastal towns do not want to see DEP in the summer. Don't do training in the summer. Usually about 23 towns. We have 2 to 3 towns together, who wants to host, but we'd like to see the communities working together also. And that again really has been very successful in garnering those kind of relationships, which is huge. We got some excellent, and it's fun, and Sammy found these, from the MassDEP Instagram page to Yarmouth Fire, some excellent advertisement and kudos online and on social media following the exercises, which is great to see because, as I've said, it's just really, really well received. No one's like, oh, geez, here we go again. It's really like bring the new guys, bring the guys that did it before, and really, really hype it up. It works out good. In Cohasset and Scituate, we had the towns Cohasset and Scituate together in April, and it was actually our 100th exercise, which was a nice milestone. That's a nice number. 24 people participated. Our commissioner Heppel came out and kind of cheered us on and observed what the whole thing is about, and it was really very successful. But that was a nice milestone of 100. Swansea and Somerset was interesting. We really, it was, everything was going smooth. The training, we have the classroom section, we do the equipment familiarization, we get out in the field, and all of a sudden we're all standing at the deployment location, and what do we see in the distance but smoke? That's a real fire, and everyone had to respond to the real fire. And that was, you go with the flow. That was a reality. It's like, well, I guess the on-water portion of this training is getting kind of a little short, but it was a structure fire, no injuries, but just a, another day, kind of like, does everyone see that over there? Is that real? So that was a good one. Chatham, East Tame, and Orleans was an excellent exercise. Mass DOT, Mass Department of Transportation, has a drone operations team, which is pretty amazing. One of our Coast Guard counterparts from Woods Hole, US, the Coast Guard Woods Hole, basically invited them, which was fantastic. And they showed up with their command posts, their computers, their drones. They're able to, people that were not at the training were watching it elsewhere because they have their remote ability. And that is just so cool. It's just so applicable that you can see it in, this whole hybrid world we live in. And that really made it very exciting. You can see the photo on the bottom right there. That's the deployment that was done. You could be standing in the back of the, in the vehicle, and the TVs, the screens there, and you're seeing everything, and it's being broadcasted everywhere. And it's really a great, their drone is so, advanced that it needs, see on the top, to see the corner bottom left, it's a little helipad, it's a little landing target so that they know where to land this drone. This drone is bigger than some of the ones people got from grants, but the grant thing and the drones and the trainings. I mean, you heard how many people received extra training from grants because the training they're getting are, annual trainings, whatever. They want more. They want more training. They want more of their fire departments trained. And that's really exciting that we can also do that through the grants. 2025 is planned. Thank you, Mike. Again, about 9 or 10 exercises. It's about 20. Anyone wants to come to one, anyone wants to observe, participate, just see one, be at one, give me a call any of us, and we will certainly put you on the list. We'd love to spread the word. We'd love to bring in different town and entities that can work, to work together, because that's what it's all about. Still response, everyone knowing people, who does what, who to call when, and what happens. And this is our program links, contacts, everyone that you've heard speak right now today. Wow. How are we on time? Are we getting out early today? No. 15 minutes early. What do we,
Want to give people like 5 minutes? I think that people can't hear in the room as much. So I'll just stand here and say that if you are online, please stick around because the first half an hour or so is going to involve everyone.
okay,
So,
please.
yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's take a little break.
Hit the button. Hit the button up top. Yeah. There you go. That'll kick it.
Sam, I'm going to switch it to my computer. All right, for folks in the room and online, we're gonna get going again. Haley, can you guys hear me okay online?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Or anyone, can you guys hear okay online?
Can you hear me, Elise?
Looking perfect. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Yeah, we can't hear you online. I think we have things muted. So maybe as we get started, do we have audio for people online?
Yes.
We do. Okay, can we maybe do a round of online introductions so we make sure people are here and let them know that we appreciate them logging on?
You're almost there.
I don't think, Haley was just trying to speak and we couldn't hear her, so. Haley, do you want to try again?
Yeah, can you hear me, Elise?
Very, very faint. Can you talk? Okay. Keep going.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, okay. Do you want to just start a round of introductions and maybe just call you see on your screen?
Just to check, you want me to go down the list of who I can see?
Just hand it over to someone else, let them hand it to someone else, so we can just kind of have a way to go through who's online.
Okay. My name is Haley Griffin. I'm with Nuka Research. I will pass it to Sam Haynes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Haynes with MassDEP, and I will pass it to Elise DeCola.
Oh, hey, I'm here in the room too. Hi. You'll hear me in a second. I'm just up there so we can see your faces.
Let's do.
Rob. Oh.
Hi, yeah, Rob Smith with Woods Hole Group. Who do I pass it on? Peter Dickman.
Hey, good morning. Peter Dickman, Beverly Harbor Master. I'll pass it to Brian Monahan.
How about next, I see Timothy Gallagher.
Morning, Timothy Gallagher, Department of Fire Services Hazmat Response.
Fonseca.
Good morning, Paul Fonseca, New Bedford Police Marine Unit, and the Harbor Master here also.
Thanks, Paul. See Mike Kavanaugh came on here.
Yeah, hi, Mike Kavanaugh. I'm the Harbor Master for Wellfleet.
Who else? Kyle Gardner.
Kyle Garner, Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency.
Thanks, Kyle. Let me see. Commander Nate Sargent.
Morning, Nate Sargent, Sector Boston.
Elise, it keeps freezing. I'm not sure if that's happening to anyone else. Can you hear me?
Everyone, folks who haven't had a chance to introduce yourself, if you want to say hi in the chat, we'll read it off. We'll go back to the slides because I think that we're breaking the internet here trying to do this. Okay, so give me 1 second. to share my screen and black screen or whatever. Okay. You can see that? Why is it like? Okay, how do we make this take up the whole screen? Perfect. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this climate change project that you've already heard mentioned a few times. And I've updated this group through the course of this project. It's been going on for 3 or 4 years now, probably. So I'm going to keep it pretty high level, with most of the time focused on trying to do a little bit of a discussion-based activity instead of just talking at the group. And so I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the project, focusing on our findings and also the next steps that we're starting to formulate as MassDEP contractors, and where we're really looking for active input from this group and from other stakeholders to the great work that MassDEP is doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've been bringing the practice of strategic foresight into this work. It's not the focus of this work, but it's been a very interesting tool that has helped, I think, us to push into some new thought spaces. And then we'll go from there into some activities. And I have 2 planned, and the first will include the online folks. Sam will help me with kind of taking what's in the chat and putting it onto sticky notes. So do stay around until you kind of lose patience if you're online. No, I think it will be interesting. So you've already heard a lot about the good work that MassDEP is doing with the MOSPRA program. And so, you know, I kind of think of it in these sort of five areas. They're working across planning, training, equipping, evaluating risks and threats, and working proactively on navigation safety through all of the different initiatives we've heard highlighted today. And so as we undertook the climate work, what we tried to do is to think about those program elements and kind of different facets of a changing climate and how they may intersect with or influence the work we're doing now or the work we're going to be continuing to do in the future. And so for the purpose of this project, we've been talking about climate in sort of 3 main categories. One being the hazards, that's the most obvious part. Storms, sea level rise, extreme temperature, the kind of the climate hazard events. We've also been looking at adaptations, which are a lot of the activities that have been in place, green solutions, engineered solutions, different projects, a lot of what the whole group is working on to adapt to the changing climate and kind of get ahead of those impacts. And then we're also looking at decarbonization, and that's actually where I'm going to focus today's exercise. And I think of the 3 areas of climate change, you kind of get from very tangible, we all know what a hurricane looks like, a little bit still tangible, we all know what it looks like to restore a marsh or to build a seawall, and then decarbonization, question mark. Like we know it's coming, we know we're seeing it happening, we see, you know, new electric vehicles on the road, we're seeing changes, starting to see LNG powered ships, but it's still an area where it becomes a little bit more difficult to project out into the future. So that's kind of where I'm going to focus what we do in the room today. But first, I'll just give you a little bit more context on what we did with this program, with the project. And I have a QR code and a couple of slides where you can link to the report that's online, and then you can read all the words and see everything yourself. So I'm just going to go super high level. But what we wanted to do is, like I said, kind of think in the future a little bit and try to kind of map MOSPRA program activities against a changing climate. We sort of looked at 3 different lines of investigation. So, and these all exist as different sub-reports over the course of the last 4 years that fed into the final report that I'm going to give you the link to. But first, we looked at exposure. Well, not necessarily first, but we looked at exposure and evaluated kind of threat by water body, by port, by type of shipping activity to kind of get an update on how threats look across Massachusetts. We then looked at climate hazards and adaptations. We did that primarily through literature review. We drew heavily on work that's already going on within the Resilient Massachusetts program and a lot of MassDEP and a lot of other agencies that are, that are living and breathing this every day. And then we also did a literature review and talked to some experts about decarbonization. So that work culminated in a workshop that I can't believe it's been 1.5 years now. And I think there's a bunch of you actually. John was there and Kathy was there. I'll forget everyone. Steve and Julie were there. Allison, you were there. Britt, you were there in the room. Where John, you were there, where we spent a day exploring the topics in kind of more of a dynamic, dynamic workshop setting. And so we focused that workshop on 3 geographic areas that have traditionally been sort of higher threat. I'm avoiding the use of the word risk because we didn't do a fulsome risk analysis. What we did is look at threat using exposure to petroleum as a proxy. So it's really, these are really the ports where you're seeing a lot of oil terminals, deliveries in areas where you're seeing more traffic. So that got us to Boston Harbor, New Bedford, Fairhaven, and Vineyard Haven, which shouldn't be super surprising to any of you. And then we broke the discussion into kind of 2 tracks. We lumped together climate hazards and adaptations, and we used a series of scenarios where we kind of presented trends that are recognized as ongoing and potential implications. And we gave small groups different questions to explore specific to what climate hazards and adaptations might mean for MOSPRA, but really more broadly for marine oil, risk preparedness and response. And we looked at that against a 2030 horizon. So looking not that far into the future, what can we see coming? Urbanization, but we went out further. We went out to 2050 for that exercise. And we used similar methods to kind of organize a discussion for each. So we're going to do something similar here where I'm going to break you into groups and pairs and we're going to respond to some prompts. A few of the kind of the outcomes that we had, some of the prompts and then the outcomes that we got from them. So as an example, we looked at 3 different geographic areas. So this is just the New Bedford example from our discussion around climate hazard and adaptation. And so we gave one small group a series of prompts that looked at things like high tide flooding and sea level rise against the hurricane barrier, which is only engineered to a certain level, and thinking about what that might mean. We looked at adaptations and resilient design guidelines as part of the adaptations that New Bedford Harbor is actually working towards to kind of get ahead of some of these issues. And we looked at some various projections around sea level rise, around storms, around flooding. And then we did an activity that maybe many of you probably participated in now. I do these a lot, but a risk certainty matrix. So we asked people to brainstorm what potential impacts could be positive or negative. And then we said, okay, now take those impacts and let's situate them on this matrix that gives us a sense for what do we see on the y-axis going up as impact. So from low to high impact. If this happens, it's going to be a big deal, or it might not be that big of a deal. And then certainty. How certain are we that we see this coming? Well, this is like a black swan, but if it happens, it could be really high impact. Or this is, we have a pretty high level of certainty that's going to happen, but maybe it's medium impact. And that helped us to start to sort and prioritize and synthesize sort of broad thoughts into some actionable items. And all of these actions kind of come into the findings that I'll share with you in a minute. So some of the common themes that we saw come up, there's a little bit of a lag on here, had to do with access to sites for responders. That seems pretty intuitive. Changes to navigation and traffic patterns, both where vessels are going, the types of vessels that we're seeing going. We talked a lot about offshore wind and implications for, for vessel servicing vessels, and if that may look the same or different to how and where vessels are going now. We looked at response measures against adaptations and thought and talked a lot about our GRS program that Julie mentioned, which is very much based on anchoring boom at shorelines where the shorelines existed when we surveyed the sites. Shorelines are changing, so do we need to update those components? Environmental justice is a concept that has emerged over the last decade or so in the sense that there are socioeconomically disadvantaged communities that maybe are already proximate to different industrial activities, and as things change, are they favorably or less favorably impacted? And there's a lot of mandates at the state and federal level around incorporating that kind of thought into planning. And then infrastructure, where is vulnerable infrastructure? I think this is where we all naturally kind of think with some of the, particularly like the flooding and sea level rise risks. So we sort of brought that into the context of the MOSPRA program. We did a similar exercise around decarbonization with prompts that were a little bit more out there, a little bit more future looking. What we did was look internationally at trends. And so there are electric tugs and ferries that we're starting to see come into service. A lot of Europe is driving a lot of this. We're seeing autonomous vessels. Norway's got one now that's in service. And then of course, we have offshore wind development. So changing horizon, changing landscape in a lot of different ways. And the group took those prompts and they worked on a different kind of thought exercise where we did these future wheels. So this one is hard to see. This is actually from the Vineyard Haven table, which I think Allison sat at. And we had a few different scenarios. So the top one is energy transition through freight reduction and EV adoption. Another one is offshore wind, and another one is electrification of recreational and commercial vessels. And so what we started with is like the first circle is, okay, what do we see happening like almost tomorrow from all these things? And then we stopped and we used that, we took that prompt and said, okay, from here, what does 5 years out look like? What does 10 years out look like? And kind of kept sort of spiraling out. And it gets you from the really tangible, like, yeah, I can see this coming to, whoa, maybe like we got to things like, maybe we have, new risks with EV fires. That's actually not that far out. Reduction in risk of large facility oil spills. So we have positives and negatives, but just changes that we might anticipate based on these things. And so some of the common themes that came up through those decarbonization conversations were, and I know you're all hearing this at our team meetings and area committee meetings, that the risks in response to alternative fuels, the potential for EV fires. I know EPA, I don't think we have EPA in the room here. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, EPA has been working a lot on EV fires, particularly on ferries. And then again, looking at changes to vessel traffic patterns and fleet composition over time. So from that wide body of work, starting with the lit review and all the studies I've talked about in the first few slides through that workshop, we came up with some findings that are in the final report. Some of these are already in practice. So Sam's been, as we do the GRS exercises, we're using those touch points with the communities as an opportunity to check in on their GRSs and just say, hey, are there any like coastal areas that have changed, even if we're not exercising that site? Like, is there anything new going on? Do you have any resilience projects that are linked geographically to where we have these plans? And should we be thinking about this? We've been talking about also, I mean, Julie's already mentioned just the wear and tear on the trailers, but are they vulnerable? Are they in locations that could be stranded if there's a roadway flooding? And so these are things that we can tangibly kind of pick up and work on. Another big theme was preparing for complex emergencies. And I was thinking about it when you showed your drill with a house fire. I mean, the thing is, it's amazing that you built this program on local first responders, because you saw the gap during the Bouchard spill, and local first responders are the point of the spear for just about anything that goes bad in any community. So we need to just be cognizant that if we do have, concurrent emergencies, there's going to be a strain on those resources. So maybe it looks like mutual aid coming from unaffected areas. It's nice that we have sort of 3 different coastlines that are exposed differently in Massachusetts. So maybe we bring North Shore stuff down. So we're starting to think about that a little bit more. And then we're talking about continuing the work that we did in the room. We got, I think the feedback was generally positive, from the bringing together of people with different perspectives to just brainstorm. And I'm going to let you taste that in a second here in the room and try it out and see what you think. But one of the things that we've been talking about doing with MOSPRA is more kind of hyper-local community-focused workshops where we can really drill in to what's on the mind of the community. It was great to do it on a regional scale, but trying to kind of focus more locally. And we heard from some of the communities that there was interest in that. Again, continuing to link the first responder exercise program is a really great touch point to 2 to 3 communities 10 times over every year. So that's a real opportunity to ground this work. And from the time we started this program, it's really been a ground up program. It doesn't work if the towns don't buy in and aren't interested. So always checking back with them. And then, looking for, if there are decarbonization trends that, that are, fit MOSPRA's mandate, which is to reduce marine oil spill risks, that kind of, maybe we can look for opportunities to explore that, and maybe the grant programs. I mean, there's lots of small ways to try things out, and then keeping the connections between this program and people that are working in the climate space, because there's definitely a big divide. It's the topic, I'm an oil spill professional. That's how I had my career. And there isn't a great deal of crossover discussion, at least in the circles that I'm in, and maybe that's changing. But so trying to kind of just keep the conversation out there. You don't know what you don't know. So at this point, I'm gonna stop the presentation. I'll take questions, and that is a QR code that you can scan. We'll send it around after the meeting if you want to grab the final report, which is also pretty easy to navigate to on MassDEP's website, or through just a Google search. That's the title of it. But any questions or comments?
Yeah, no, this only question is, how does this exercise hold in foreseeable future policy changes?
That's I think that's an area where we need to be talking to the people that have their finger on the pulse of it. What we're going to do in the room today is very much going to draw on your expertise and not go there. But there is a lot of research that I think is important to keep connected. And I know, like Kathy, I know you cross into some of the climate groups. I don't know if you have any thoughts on policy.
Not this time. I mean, it's still so, there's listed. That next level up is the policy. I think that's where we probably would be worthwhile to make sure. I mean, I think we mentioned we want to make sure we have those conversations, but I'm not sure where they're taking place.
Yeah. So maybe that's something we can try to more actively track, because I do find it overwhelming myself as not being steeped in the climate world when I pick my head up every once in a while before I'm going to talk in front of a group and be like, okay, what has changed? And there's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, so I agree. So I think for the state per se, that information, we are talking about that right now at the policy level. And my question was more focused on maybe private sector or maybe the Pilots Association, or just, we don't need an answer, maybe just an awareness that it would be important for us to sort of successfully navigate through this futures process. That you don't think about backfall provisions or harping on the work that we've done in the past successful and sort of, to have the ability to continue to move forward. And just the perspectives, I think, from private sector and municipal world would be important, for sure important for MassDEP.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so I've really spoken heavily to how the program is focused on towns, but we've integrated very much with the private sector, and hopefully we'll get to some of those, at least identifying what the questions or the uncertainties are today in our discussion specific to decarbonization. But there's an opportunity to be a link, maybe from MOSPRA, between this group and some of those bigger policy initiatives. Anything online, Sam? Okay, so we're going to move in then to a quick exercise where folks online should be able to participate through the chat. And we're going to kind of try to look into a crystal ball a little bit. So I got a couple of context slides here that should probably be familiar to most of you. But when we speak specifically about decarbonization, there's a lot of different drivers, and many of them are way beyond Massachusetts. So a big one is shipping. Shipping is international. There's an International Maritime Organization that has set targets for greenhouse gas emissions and other particulate emissions that are driving changes internationally to fleet composition. And this isn't necessarily something that we control in Massachusetts, but it's something that's going to eventually impact the kinds of ships, especially when we are seeing international shipping coming in and out of primarily Boston, but also through our waterways to other major ports. So there's all kinds of different initiatives that have to do with a lot of different components between shipping internationally. One of the implications that I think that came up a lot in our work and in our workshop is alternative fuels. And there's LNG, which is already taking root as a very popular transition fuel, particularly in North America. But there's ammonia, there's hydrogen, there's electrification of vessels, there's methane, there's biofuels. And what we know is that between today and 2050, there's going to be some changes, and the fleet will change over time. So there are also state level drivers, and Massachusetts. This graphic comes from the roadmap to decarbonization, which was published probably 6 years or so ago now by the Commonwealth, and it identifies a lot of different pathways for Massachusetts to meet their goal of being net zero by 2050. And I think the first and the third one, the electrification of vehicles, we already talked a little bit about that from the vehicle carrier perspective, but from the ferry perspective. And then there's decarbonizing the energy supply and, very heavily reliant on offshore wind in Massachusetts policy. And so we're already seeing some implications of that. We've seen oil terminal decommissioning in Boston. We've seen the proliferation of renewables and new offshore wind. And we're starting to see in other places electrification of both ports and vessels that are using them. And so, kind of as a starting question, like where we're going to go for the rest of this morning is trying to think about what's coming, how we might anticipate what's coming, and how we might think about that and how it intersects with what MOSPRA is doing, but also with the programs and industries that MOSPRA's good work supports, both at a municipal and at a private sector and at an other government partner level. So I don't want to get too heavy into kind of this method. So strategic foresight is kind of a methodology that we've been using to get these conversations going. It's not new. It's been around in like military strategy for decades. It's called a bunch of different things. Besides people who've already heard me talk about this, is this familiar to anyone in the room? Future theory, foresight. It's just a way. It's a tool for strategically or methodically working through complex topics and trying to overcome some of the challenges that we face sometimes when we're dealing with very ambiguous or uncertain or complex or volatile issues or trends. And so it's very well suited, I think, to what we're trying to explore here around decarbonization. Just the one example that I find fairly accessible to try to describe what we're going to try to do here with sticky notes and on the wall in a bit. Of course, the sun just came out. Is that if you think of your perspective and you think of looking through a keyhole into a room, you see what's framed by that keyhole and nothing else. So you may get a really accurate picture of what's in that keyhole, and that may be completely irrelevant to what's going on, and maybe a whole circus around you outside, and you're just seeing one elephant. If you think about kind of looking at the future more through a flashlight, so if you think about a flashlight beam, and the cone of possibility is a very familiar framework for us because we use it for hurricanes. But in the center of the beam, that's what you can see coming. You know that. But then as you sort of get out to the periphery, these are what if the hurricane wobbles this way or that? They're the potential plausible futures that may occur, kind of coming out from today if things change. And where we want to try to get to with this exercise today is the outside of that flashlight cone. So we all can see what we can see. What are we maybe not seeing, or what's coming at the periphery, and how can we decode that? So the last concept I'll throw out is one of educated incapacity. And it's a fancy term, but it's a pretty simple concept. Has anyone bumped into this before, or does anyone have a guess about what this means? Does anyone have an kind of, yeah. Yes. Kathy said only see what you're looking for. I have a slightly fancier definition, but does anyone have a business degree here? We're all scientists. Anybody, does this picture, the Kodak, does the Kodak story, does anyone know the Kodak story? Pat, you know it? No? I certainly didn't go to business school, but in 1975, an engineer at Kodak developed the first digital camera. This engineer brought that concept to upper management. At that point, the Kodak company was really invested in high quality printing and developing better lenses. And upper management said, squash it. That's not where we're going. It's never going to catch on. Let it go. And so it did catch on. Sony came in 6 or 7 years later, marketed the first camera. Kodak went back to their think tank and said, ooh, I guess it's on the market now. Let's figure out what the future looks like. And what they came up with was, oh, we have 10 years till it really becomes prominent in the marketplace. So they doubled down over those 10 years on their optics and their printing and essentially missed the boat. There's a similar analogy around, they almost started the first Facebook like 3 years before Zuckerberg. And if you Google it, there's lots of Forbes articles. But so the definition is basically when you know so much about what you know that you can't see beyond what you know. You can't look at things differently. And we're a room full of experts. We all have deep expertise, and we need it for what we do day to day. And it can sometimes kind of be a barrier. So the first quick exercise that I want to do is to kind of do a little bit of a self-exploration. So I'd like for you guys, I put sticky notes around in the room. People on the chat can work individually, work in pairs or threes, grab a sticky note, grab a pen. This is rapid fire. We're gonna have like 5 minutes for this. And I want you to just think about kind of what you know from either a personal or an organizational perspective. Wherever you want to take this is fine. So so for folks, Sam, can you move the webcam?
Yes.
Actually, I guess they can. Oh, okay. So for the first, you see on the wall this very basic drawing that I did, and it's also on the slide. But one way to kind of explore this concept of educated incapacity is to inventory the assumptions, constants, and indisputable facts that you bring to a conversation about decarbonization. So thinking about what we talked about or not, bringing what you know day to day or think. I'm looking for like 1 sticky note per pair for each of those 3 prompts. So it's, what do you think? What do you believe about the future of decarbonization is your assumption. No matter what happens in the future, this is definitely going to be true as your constant, and blank is an undeniable truth that is going to carry into the future. 5 minutes. If you want to bring them up and kind of stick them on the wall, yeah, and come in and chat, and there's no wrong answers, and think about anything after And the category doesn't matter that much. They're all going to come together. So don't worry about it's a Venn diagram. It all overlaps.
All right.
So about a minute, minute and a half to wrap up. And then for folks in the room, if you can just kind of bring your stickies up, situate them where you think they fit best. And nothing's going to be attributed to you. And in the chat, if anyone online wants to All right, go ahead and we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. So if you want to stick your stickies on the wall, and Sam's copying. Thanks for those who have been playing along in the chat. Yeah, so now that you did all that work, we're going to stop and move on and talk about something else. We'll come back to it though. So okay, just a little bit of a pause here. So I'm going to set up the next exercise, and then it is going to be too cumbersome for folks online to probably feed into. But if you want to go away online for, probably half an hour and check back in, we'll debrief. I anticipate we'll probably wrap up a little bit before 12 today. So so yeah, welcome to stay along online or to jump out and jump back in. So I'm going to throw another concept out there, and this is going to be the structure of our next thought exercise. And is anyone familiar with the 3 horizons? It's a planning tool, strategic planning concept that I will explain. Okay, so the basic idea is that we're now doing something similar to what I described from the workshop in a year ago, May, where we're going to try to project into the future and to try to come up with some, sort of specific potential futures that we might want to be thinking about or looking for or working towards or trying not to have happen. And so we're going to conduct the next exercise across 3 time horizons. So the first time horizon, which is in red on the chart, is today. It's now. It's now as in today, this week, this month, what's happening right now that we see already. And then the second time horizon is what's going on like from tomorrow. Tomorrow could be January, but into about 10 years in the future. And then the third time horizon, we're going to jump to 2050 and forward. So the reason that we do this is it gives us a way to kind of put on different perspectives when we think about time and about the future in different ways. So this is an approach that was developed in the UK. It's used a lot in business management and strategic planning. So the idea of your first horizon, this is the today horizon, is it's sort of like the managerial outlook. So you're a manager, you're trying to keep things moving day to day, you're working within the system that you work within, and you're locked in, you're bound into your skis, you're going down the hill. And things change around you, you're going to try to adjust, but you're not going to take your skis off. You know, you've kind of, that's your operating system. You're working within the systems that exist right now. And essentially what happens over time with most managerial views, and that Kodak example was one, is that the strategic fit, as the situation changes around you, it's eventually going to erode. Maybe it's summer and you're still in winter skis, or you know, maybe you've been transported to the middle of a lake. And maybe things have changed around you. So at some point over time, if you go 50, you know, if we're going out 20 years, 25 years in the future, keeping the same managerial view will eventually start to have diminishing returns. And so when we talk about Horizon 1, that's kind of the mindset that we're in. I'm jumping to Horizon 3 because this is how we're going to do the exercise. And it's a little bit easier to conceptualize it when you look at these two curves cross at first, and then we bring in the third curve. But Horizon 3 is basically like the visionary. It's the transformational. It's looking way, way out. It's way out at the cone of flashlight. And here's where you're going to think about like transformative shifts. So you're not skiing at all now. You're on a hoverboard, you know, kind of going from mountain peak to mountain peak. We're in a sci-fi future. It's a little bit, you know, the managerial, the systems that we're operating in will likely have changed by then. If you see kind of where the green curve starts, there are elements of that visionary future that exist now. And part of what we're trying to do is to see those so that we can sort of get a sense for where what's happening today might lead in the future. And so when we think about Horizon 3, I'm using 2050 plus, so we're at least 25 years out, and we're questioning a lot of the assumptions, and we're going to come back to some of those, those assumptions and constants and indisputable facts, and revisit what we think about those after we've done this exercise. And then the second horizon is the stickiest. It's the most challenging. It's where organizations and humans often fail. It's the transition zone. The viewpoint, the analogy is often entrepreneurial. So you're thinking differently. You're trying new things. Some of them are going to work. Some of them aren't going to work. But the transition zone is like where we are today to these transformational visionary futures. So when you're thinking in that second horizon, it's really useful to look both ways. You look into the past and you look into the future. They describe it as a zone of innovation and turbulence. And so but it's an important place to think about, because there are transitions. And these, I think, particularly when we think about decarbonization, it's the transition space that to me is the most blurry, and the one that and I can't wait to see how it turns out, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think a lot of your sticky notes are speaking to that already. Like, we see where this is going, but how on earth do we get from where we are today to what that is? And what's it going to look like in the middle? So for this exercise, again, with this just kind of this summary graphic here of the three curves and how they intersect and interrelate, I'm going to, again, I'm going to put you in pairs, and you're going to have kind of like about 10 minutes per horizon to work together. You can work in your same groups, or if you didn't like your partner, you can pick another partner. No judgment. But yeah, so think about the trends that I put up on the card earlier. And some of I really want you to draw from what you all know and day to day, because that's a lot of what we're trying to elicit here. And just focusing on Horizon 1 now, we'll start with 1, then we'll go to 3, then we'll go to 2. Kind of 2 questions, and if you don't want to answer these questions, answer questions that you do want to answer. But for me, kind of some ways to think about it. What are the dominant systems or assumptions that we're operating within? So what we're trying to get you to do is describe the present day in a way that relates to what you're doing, what you're dealing with in your organization. And what are the key factors that are impacting your decisions today? So what is right in front of you? What is on your dashboard right now for today? I'm going to say 10 minutes, but if people seem like they're done or bored faster than that, it won't go any longer than that. Again, sticky notes, pairs, brainstorm a bit, and then spend a little bit more time situating your stuff on the horizon. In that, I want you to kind of take a look at, thinking about, like, in this case, like, what are things that may have legs into the future, and what are things that may kind of tank as time goes on, and try to situate your sticky these vertically. If you need to use that extra space, that's fine. So about 5 minutes, and then spend a little time and talk to one another as you're putting them up there about what, it's an opportunity to interact. So excellent. It is, yeah, 11:18. We will deep draft part stuff. audio back on for folks that are still online. So we're going to move on to Horizon 3. And if you're still finishing up your sure you can stick them up. Sam was noticing that the people online who were typing like couldn't fit on a sticky note, and I was like, that's the beauty of a sticky note, is you kind of have to be brief. So okay, now we are going to jump forward to Horizon 3. So we're going now to 2050 and forward. This is where we get wacky sci-fi thinking. And so the prompting questions are, so you've just kind of cataloged the systems and assumptions that we're working within today. What's going to replace them? What's the digital camera? You know, what you think wild and crazy. Like I said, sci-fi is actually a tool that you use a lot in this kind of work to just like write a sci-fi novel, because half of what we've seen in sci-fi has come true. So you might want to think specifically about new technologies or trends or inventions that are coming up that you're excited about, or conversely, technologies, trends, or inventions that might be coming up that terrify you, that look like a very dystopian future. I said on the slide 10 and 5, but I think we'll try to keep this one again to like 10 minutes. Maybe I'll give you a little bit more because it's a little harder to do. But yeah, think outside the box about what 2050 plus, what the systems might be there, and then we'll come back and fill in Horizon 2 and talk about all this. Maybe 11:30-ish. Unmute? Okay. Yeah, so how is that? How is that jumping from today to 2050? Scary. Yeah, totally. Yes, it is. Yeah, the future is unknown, and it's that uncertain and ambiguous. And how do we? Yeah. This is the hardest part. But we're gonna do this Horizon 2 as a discussion, and I'm not gonna formally read all the input from Horizons 1 and 3, but this group discussion is your opportunity to highlight kind of what you've put up and what others have put up. So before we start the discussion, if you guys want to take a couple minutes and go and try to read some of the sticky notes, maybe just a minute or two, or not, or maybe looked at them when you put them up, but I'll give folks a minute, and if you don't want to do that, that's okay. And then we'll talk a little bit about what happens in the middle space. Yeah, take pictures. We'll also circulate them. I'll take pictures when I get them off the wall, so you can actually. It's hard to read sunshine. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, exactly. That's how I read things. That's how I read instructions now.
Well, then it's like, what do I need at the store to fix this? Like, I need this. Definitely works.
Where do we do that?
Oh, yeah, this is part. This one's.
All right, if I can get everyone one more time, sit down or stand up. But I do want to have like a kind of a wrap-up conversation. I'm actually going to put my glasses on so I can. Well, let me see. We've still got some folks online, so I guess I'll stay here. So I'll try to kind of summarize what I hear from people so folks online can hear you. But maybe we'll just start. So we're going to focus right now just on the 3 horizons. We're going to go back to the assumptions at the end. But now that you've had a chance to sort of look at what your colleagues came up with here and reflect on your own thoughts, thinking about Horizon 1 and then jumping to Horizon 3, what components of Horizon 1 do you think may be most in the future? Which red curve do we think are going to decline in the middle zone? I'm going to go over here and look at some of them and see if anyone has any comments. So infrastructure, capital is on here. Dominant assumptions. Yeah. A couple of them around infrastructure. Does anyone want to talk about how today's infrastructure is going to be challenged in 2050? Yeah, just jump in.
I I could see it going, the challenge of infrastructure for adopting current renewable options will improve. So that won't be as much of a challenge, but then as we look at newer technologies that come out, we'll again be like, oh crud, we don't have an infrastructure for that new thing. So the specific infrastructure will no longer be a challenge, but there will always be the infrastructure challenge.
So infrastructure is a challenge, and the idea that some infrastructure is going to be irrelevant, other infrastructure may get adapted. And so that's kind of what we started to see in the middle space, right? Is what goes away, what gets repurposed. And let me see some other trends, or if people have stuff they want to throw out.
Well, I think the public acceptance of it is one of the drivers too. So the education, so that you have public acceptance of it. You're going to have the people who are like, they're either going to be like, we believe it's true, or we're going to follow it or not. You're going to have the people who say, there's no way, heck, I'm going to do that. I'm going to stick my oil because I love my truck. And you're going to have the others that are going to say, I'm only going to do it if somebody's going to pay for it, but not me. So you gotta somehow get from that to people going, I love it. And my house now has, solar tiles and everything's electric, and there's no such thing as oil.
Yeah, I'm gonna just repeat that back to the text. And Sam and I had a similar conversation on the off. It's just that changing behaviors, where we have behaviors and our behaviors are informed by our views, and that has to change to get to transformational futures, or there needs to be incentive or external drivers that bring people along.
As the current infrastructure falls out of favor, there's going to be less incentive to maintain that infrastructure, and you're going to have more incidents just because it's not as well maintained at this point.
So infrastructure, Pete's talking about infrastructure-driven transient risks as things age out, and the incentive to maintain, infrastructure that's going to be irrelevant. And so similarly, in any of these, kind of what do we see as most vulnerable in the present, and or what do we think might be most resilient that are here present today already to a 2050 decarbonized future?
Maybe like EV charging stations, they're just going to maybe increase.
Yeah.
They're already here now.
Yeah, EV charging stations, I think, are definitely strengthened by a decarbonized future and become more valuable, widespread.
Gas stations might challenge that, gas station, if you have a petroleum car 50 years from now, you might not be able to refuel it anymore. That might be the reason that makes some people get rid of it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that paradigm shift where right now
yeah.
you have an EV and you're like, oh my God, where can I charge?
Right,
Now
it's
it's going to be
switch.
Yeah.
At some point, I'm not buying petroleum because I can't fill my gas tank anymore.
Mhm.
I gotta get an EV.
Yeah, but that's, I agree 100% in that. It's almost scary too, because you feel like 50 states, 5 territories, District of Columbia are not united front on a certain future endpoint. We might as well just vacation in Massachusetts. I mean, who knows if we can actually get an EV somewhere else, right?
Millie just brought up the uncertainty and the fact that our current system today, the fact is we have 50 different states, 5 different territories, and a federal government that all have policies that are going to drive how things change, and that change might start to become more disparate, and it may look very different to take a road versus to take a road trip in the Southwest. And yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, as well as you have the federal highway system, so there may be some elements of that.
Yeah.
Pockets that are not the same, but also the railroad system and how you're moving goods. So even though cars are moving, the personal vehicles thing, how are the actual transport, that industry is another one that has to buy into it and make changes.
Yeah, Kathy just brought up the two of the ground infrastructure systems that our whole country moves on, rail and highways. And what are those systems? How is it relevant in 2050, what changes, how we get there. So maybe the last prompt is just working back from Horizon 3. Are there, do you have, does it spark any ideas about what you think we should be doing, we, your organization, we as a collective, to get us to a place of stability, of a happy future, and or things that we should be concerned about, creating a chaotic dystopian, not functional future system? These are huge things that you probably didn't think you were gonna have to come talk about on a Thursday morning, so. And it's okay if you want to just kind of ruminate on that. Did you?
I mean, the hard part's gonna be that I don't see any way that you're gonna get a clear consensus on this is the best way to go forward. You're always gonna get outlying groups and fringe groups, and eventually the market should take care of it, and then the best technology will win, but it's gonna be messy getting to that point.
Yes, messy in the middle is definitely of what as transitioning. And you're right, there's a lot of forces that are competing. There's fact, there's opinion, there's there's
Big
money,
facts, real
there's
facts,
there's economics, there's all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think if there's one thing that these exercises of kind of looking forward and then hindcasting back to getting to places is something you can bring to very specific. I throw out decarbonization is like a huge topic. We could be at the UN for a week and not get, we probably did just as well as they would. But it's a big topic, but you can kind of take these to smaller things that maybe are in your orbit, and it's a very simple thought exercise. So I want to wrap us up. I love meetings that end early. And so I want to go back now to this educated incapacity. So why did I start with that? Because the purpose of the exercise really was decarbonization in 2050. Why did I start with that? Okay, fun fact from Google. Our human brains can process about 11 million bits of information per second. With that, what percentage or how many bits per second do you think our conscious brain can process? Doopy's got an answer. I Googled I've been fed this fact before, so I don't know. Yeah, you can call neuroscientists, but we're going to go with that as a truth for this exercise. Anybody want to throw out a number so I can?
150.
All right, that's a good number. It's actually about a third of that, so it's 40 to 50 bits per second. So the reason that that's important, and the way to me that it ties back to these assumptions, constants, and facts, is that you had 5 minutes to spit these out, and you came up with what was the top of you, kind of your head, and what we, kind of what we bring to this specific topic. That's what's in your, that's the. So for the, 10.9999999 million bits of information that come in that you can't consciously process, they're going through that operating system. So they're going through those assumptions, they're going through constants, they're going through those indisputably wired. We're not going to rewire the human brain here. But I think when trying to kind of address these really broad, conceptual, challenging concepts, it's useful to every once in a while interrupt yourself, interrupt your own thinking, and just kind of check, like, let me consciously sort of process this. And so I'm going to sort of end there and invite comments and discussion. And maybe I saw people taking pictures of the board. Go ahead and do that. But I think as we kind of get into these conversations about these complex intersections, this isn't the work of MOSPRA to solve this, but it's an interesting way of thinking to maybe get us to just anticipate and start getting ahead of the curve, or at least be starting to look for things that we should be thinking about that are maybe outside of the mental mindsets of the operating systems that we kind of bring to our day-to-day life. And that's a huge challenge that I fail at most days. But yeah, so again, just, you know, maybe some of this has helped to think about climate resilience in MOSPRA. I would welcome any kind of closing comments or feedback if there's anything that's come to your mind, and if you just want to let this gel and go have lunch and or never think about it again, that's it. But open the floor.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for participating, and Elise, you always do a fantastic job, and special kudos to Sam as well and all the presenters. 2025 is going to be a very important year for, never mind, you know, state of Massachusetts, our nation. There will be a lot of interesting, you know, dialogue around prioritization of our mission. And I think this process is really going to help sort of illustrate the importance of staying in the moment and at the same time looking to the future. DP will turn 50 years old, so a lot has changed. We seek comments with regards to how we can showcase this work. I want to tell you that the commissioner, this is one of her favorite programs. Kathy and Julie and the entire team here always do a great job elevating things as I do to try to get the attention. But for sure, the climate conversation and how MOSPRA can assist with resiliency is going to be front and center. You know, we strengthened our regulations this past March to accommodate for licensed professional thinking with regards to rendering decisions that also point to resiliency and ways to do a better job about data, site characterization, and all those things. So we definitely need more conversation, honest feedback as to where MassDEP is falling down, where we need to elevate things, how we need to stay in the moment and forward. So this has been really amazing today, just great work. And I want to thank all our partners. You guys are amazing. And we wouldn't be here without you. That's a fact. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Anyone else have a, really, it's a very hard act.
I think that there's some, I mean this concept, this process, this just kind of, I mean, with my technical toxicology, this gymnastics trying to first football, and my brother, you know, hey, you never scored anything, you know, because that's, you know, someone thought of that. And, I mean, and you know, having Nuka and Elise and Pete and Sam and the whole Nuka team, when you know, the Sharpie 20 happened and MOSPRA was being, you know, this program was just getting born, the act wasn't even passed, I don't think. All the proposals for the contractors came to the emergency response section, Rich Packard, who was the founding DEP here, handed it all to the staff and said, hey guys, read these. So what do you think of it? I read the one for Nuka. And you were all out of Alaska. I'm like, these people are in Alaska, but they're amazing. I'm like, this is so much fun. I'm like, wow, I love these people. And almost 30 years ago, here we all are, you know, in the roles where they are. They're now in Plymouth, that's much closer. And it's just amazing how over time this program has grown and flourished and just become you know, so rewarding in so many ways for, you know, those involved directly and indirectly in public and private and industrial. And it's really, you know, very, very, very special. And I think it's very, very healthy. And I'm just overwhelmed at how, you know, the commitment, as I said, from the local responders, the communities, for the trainings, you know, reaching out for, you know, equipment and anything of that sort. Anything that we can do, but any ideas that people are walking away with, or comments, or, you know, connections, or as your minds are thinking about everything that we covered today, please, you know, shout out. I have to talk to the wind folks more. We've got stuff going on about irrigating over here. We've got, you know, different ideas that are being discussed, ports, everything else. And I think it's just been a, you know, it's always a very rewarding meeting. Next year or in the future, I am making it a mantra of my own, and I meant to do it this year, was really to kind of engage the committee members, you know, period, because it's kind of a one, you know, you're on this committee, there's a list of people, not a lot of our committee members have participated today, And it's a matter of, hey, I gotta do a little knocking on the door and say, hey, this is what this is all about. This is why we want you on this committee. So that's a downfall on my part. I'll take full responsibility and I'll stop bothering them all and making sure that we have the right people on the committee. Sitting here going, hey, I think I'd like to, be in that kind of role or take, a seat or whatever, please shout and let's do it. We want to keep it strong. We want to keep it moving forward. And, we just have, it's great people, internal, external, private, it's like the public, every people in this room. So thank you. So thank you so much. I think we're adjourned.
Thank you to those of you who joined online. I will be sending out the slideshow and the recorded materials to you shortly. Thank you again, and talk to you soon.